my friend invited me to this screening of, oh, you want to come see an Al Pacino movie? He's doing these screenings. So I went. I'm the biggest Al Pacino fan. And they said, oh, we're going to watch his film, Bobby Deerfield. And I remember being like, what? And I had never heard of this movie. And I thought I had seen all Al Pacino everything. And we watched the movie, and I met Al that night. It was amazing. And then I went back to my life. It just kind of kept coming into my head, this like horrible 70s film where Al Pacino plays a Formula One driver that's just kind of, longing for change. He's, risking his life every race, but he's just so unhappy. I don't know. I just kind of became obsessed with it and was curious why it didn't get more attention. And it makes sense because the movie's not that great, but it's really special. And I started taking like driving lessons. I started like researching all the reviews about it and how it almost killed his career. And Vincent Gallo actually introduced the film when we were there. And he said when he was making his films, his editor was like, oh, you made your Bobby Deerfield. Which he meant by that is like, oh, you made a masterpiece that might be misunderstood. I don't know, it just stuck with me. And my manager was like, all right, so what's going on? And what are you going to do for your next album? I was like, I'm taking stick shift lessons. I'm obsessed with this film. And just one day it hit me that it was like, I just need to make my Bobby Deerfield. No idea what it was supposed to sound like, what it would be about, but I knew it was called Bobby Deerfield. The song I enjoyed the most to make on Bobby Deerfield was a song called Targa, just because it's kind of like an older house song that just kind of happened. And I'm not, a house artist, and Jonathan Wilson isn't really a house producer. And we got Ian Isaiah to be a feature on it, so it's a really good one. It's one of my favorites. My favorite song on the new album is probably called A Star for a Star. It's a ballad, shocker. And it's really beautiful. I think the hardest song to write was definitely Alfa Romeo. It was the last song. I kind of finished everything, and then I just still had this one track that I had to write to. And I knew it was going to be challenging because it was up-tempo, and it was more of like a rock song. I just kept listening to the instrumental, being like, I know this has to be about my dad, because that's the whole metaphor for this album. It's kind of the catalyst for all the other songs in ways. I tend to write about things that are real in my life. I wish that I didn't. I think I'm such an introvert, and yet I can't help but be honest in my lyrics. And Bobby Deerfield, I related to him personally at first. And then suddenly, as I started making music and starting to write lyrics for this album, I thought it was going to be this kind of journey about myself, not talking about my romantic relationships, because my last albums were very much about heartbreak and affairs and cheating and one night stands. And this album, I was like, oh, this is where I'm happy. There's no one else that I have to deal with. And somehow I started realizing like, oh, wait, there's still someone that I haven't forgiven or confronted. And I realized it was my father. And Bobby Deerfield, I think subconsciously was really a reflection of my father, which is a reflection of myself too. So kind of the nucleus of the album is about how my dad has affected me and has maybe shaped who I've become, or who I want to be, or who I don't want to be. That song, ironically, was the last one to be turned in, and the hardest to write, because there had to be one song that confronted him directly. Lyrically, the other songs, it's more about myself and how he's affected me and what it means and different things like that. But Alfa Romeo was like, hey, Dad. And that was the real direct one that kind of, makes it real. In the movie Bobby Deerfield races for the team Alfa Romeo. So I thought it would be a nice Easter egg to be like, oh, the song's about my dad. And if Bobby Deerfield is my dad, he raced for Alfa Romeo. And just the kind of sense of like, I don't need an Alfa Romeo. I can drive my own car. I can pick my own decisions. So it was kind of this, I love like Easter eggs and like clues and stuff like that. I mean, it's like I am my father's daughter. do I want to be my father's daughter? There's some traits that I love that I have of his, and there's some that I wanted to correct. And it's just, yeah, I think I am Bobby Deerfield, and he's Bobby Deerfield. Like, that's the thing. Who is Bobby Deerfield? And it could be anyone to you. It could be your mom. It could be yourself. And that's kind of where the title became bigger than just an Al Pacino movie to me. And also, you know, my dad's on this album now, which is crazy. And through this whole process, me and my dad have gotten much closer. It's pretty crazy. You know, I don't know what my dad thinks about the album being about him. Maybe we'll have to ask him. But he definitely hasn't heard it all. But he said, like, he if he has to play the villain, he will. And I think through this, he's also realized, you know, we all make mistakes and it's okay. Working with Jonathan Wilson was great. I mean, I think I came to him, I actually just DM'd him and was like, hey, I think I would love to just come over and pitch to you this idea for this new album. And he's like, okay, come over. So I went to his studio in Topanga and was just like, my new album's going to be called Bobby Deerfield, but I have no idea. That's it. And he's like, what? But, you know, he works on Porsches. He liked the concept. And then I said, well, I have no idea what it's going to sound like. And he goes, well, we'll figure it out. And I think just, you know, he comes from jazz and folk and Americana and rock, and I come from jazz, R&B, soul, blues. He has his own styles and genres, and I had mine, and I really wanted to shift and try something new, and I felt like Bobby Deerfield had to have this kind of more grounding sonic palette. So I just felt like he was the right guy, and he's just amazing. I have no 10 for 10 across the board working with Jonathan Wilson. I'm sure he thinks I'm crazy because we worked together in the studio, and then I like took all the songs, then he just didn't hear from me for 6 months because I kind of like hoard it all and then write all the lyrics after the fact. I am really proud of this album because, you know, this is a huge risk for me. This is the first time I've worked with someone new than my last producers, and it's a little bit of a shift sonically. I feel like everyone always says, oh, she's changing her sound, and not me personally, but why would I want to keep the same sound forever? I think it's like important to evolve. And also I've set myself up so if someone says, oh, this is her worst album yet, then I can say, I made my Bobby Deerfield.